All right. Hello and welcome. Hello and welcome. Welcome to another episode of the Empowered Immigrant Live. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Otis Landerholm, and I'm the founding attorney here at Landerholm Immigration, A.P.C., where we fight for your American dream. Today, I want to share some news from the U.S. Supreme Court. All right. And we'll talk about TPS. TPS the Supreme Court has allowed the Trump administration to cancel TPS for 350,000 people from Venezuela. And so I want to talk about that and some other things that are happening at the U.S. Supreme Court right now. And so welcome, and thank you so much for being here. All right, as always, the Empowered Immigrant Live is here to train, teach, inspire, and empower immigrants to make the most out of immigration laws and to make the most out of their lives. And today, our theme is news, immigration-related news from the United States Supreme Court. My question for you is, do you want to get a green card this year? Do you want to apply for some kind of strategy, asylum, U visa, VAWA, whatever it is, so that you can increase the quality of your life through your immigration process? Because if so, go for it. All right, and I'd love to help you with that. My firm is on a mission to win 10,000 immigration cases in the next 10 years. We would love for your case to be one of them. All right, and so, here we are in May of 2025. Trump has been back in power in the White House for over 100 days now, and a lot has changed, as you're aware. The Laken Riley Act was passed into law. ICE is getting started with its mass deportation efforts. The registration requirement is active and is effective. People have been deported under the Alien Enemies Act. Immigration judges have been fired. Lots of things have changed within the world of immigration law in just the last few months. All right. The registration requirement, USCIS is receiving applications as we speak for the registration of undocumented immigrants. Many people are already registered, and therefore you don't need to worry about it. If you've ever had a visa or been in immigration court before, etc., then you are already registered. And the best advice there is to get advice from a lawyer before registering, because there's consequences if you do and there's consequences if you don't, right? And so I want everybody to get good advice about that before doing it. I also want to share, we have a client who was detained by ICE this morning, and he was detained at an adjustment of status interview, and my team is working on it right now, and we're going to prepare an emergency motion to reopen for him, and he didn't have to be detained by ICE, and ICE decided to do it. And it's very frustrating. Sometimes we take cases that have risk, and sometimes we win those cases. We've won those cases even under the current administration. And sometimes the strength of a case is so strong that it's like, hey, we should win this, right? But unfortunately, ICE is being difficult, and they might deport our client. If they do, he'll have a strong case for a waiver, right? An I-212 waiver to bring him back after a deportation. And they know that, and so it's kind of a waste of resources, honestly, to detain and deport. And we are going to do everything in our power to prevent him from being deported. But, my heart goes out. My heart goes out. It's like, sometimes I second guess myself. Did we make the wrong call there? Time will tell. We'll see what we can do for him. And anyway, that's that's where we're at. That's where we're at. So what I want to share for my topic today is what's happening at the U.S. Supreme Court right now. And yesterday, the U.S. Supreme Court issued a decision allowing Trump and the Trump administration to cancel 350,000 Venezuelans TPS. Okay? And you'll remember that Biden and the Biden administration granted TPS extensions to Venezuelans in Biden's final days of his administration. All right, and you'll remember, if you're not familiar, right, the situation in Venezuela is not good, right? It is, there's a lot of political and civil unrest. There's serious poverty. It's a very difficult situation that Venezuela is facing right now. And so for that reason, the Biden administration extended TPS for Venezuelans. But then almost immediately when Trump entered power, he canceled that, that grant of TPS. But the canceling of it was challenged in the courts. All right, so Trump's decision to cancel TPS was challenged in the courts, and there was a great decision by Judge Chen here in the Northern District of California, and I actually was a clerk with Judge Chen in the Northern District of California when I was in law school, all right? And so it was great for me to see that decision. I loved, actually, that decision. And there was an injunction issued against the Trump administration's canceling of TPS. But that injunction that was issued was appealed, all right? And it was appealed and all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court. And yesterday, the Supreme Court said that the Trump administration does have the authority to cancel TPS. And so, you know, in that one decision, 350,000 people will lose their immigration status, right? They will lose their TPS. It's a big deal. All right, think about that. One decision by 9 people in Washington, D.C., and 350,000 people lose their immigration status. All right, pretty crazy. Pretty serious consequences. And so what does that mean if you have TPS? And what does that mean if you have TPS from Venezuela? Well, really what it means is it's time to get a lawyer, all right? File asylum if you haven't already. File a U visa if you're eligible. File a marriage-based case if you're married to a U.S. citizen. Get a lawyer and do a detailed consultation and think about what other option might you have to stay in the U.S., all right? And often, just knowing the situation in Venezuela, often the best next step is to file asylum, all right? But asylum has risks too, right? So this is not a easy decision, and don't just do it without really talking it through with a lawyer first. But in my experience, I've done and won many asylum cases from Venezuela. Like that will probably be the most common alternative. Okay? But in the meantime, your TPS will be terminated. So it's time to find another option, and you'll want to do that. All right? The real effect, in my opinion, is the asylum offices are just going to be even more inundated, right? They are just full and overflowing, have way more cases than they can possibly handle, which then overflows to the immigration courts, which will have way more cases than they can possibly handle as well. And so the real result of this is it's just going to slow everything down for everyone, and it's really disappointing to see this unfold, right? To see this process. So Anyway, that's what I wanted to share today. The other thing that has happened in the U.S. Supreme Court, the good side, right? The bad side is they've agreed with the Trump administration saying that they have the power to cancel TPS for 350,000 people from Venezuela. So that's the bad side. The good side is, I don't know if you saw this decision just a couple days ago, was that the Supreme Court is not allowing the Trump administration to just deport people without any due process under the Alien Enemies Act, right? The Supreme Court has said that the Trump administration must give people an opportunity to respond to charges or allegations under the Alien Enemies Act before just immediately deporting them. And so we're going to see how that plays out and whether that gets involved with the immigration courts or whether that's some other, what constitutes due process there, how can people fight about it, whether it's federal court challenges, etc., for those individuals. But that came out also from the U.S. Supreme Court. All right, so the U.S. Supreme Court is not 100% siding with Trump on everything. That's not my message here. They decided with Trump about TPS, but each case before them is a different case, right? And they'll decide things differently at each step of the process. So that's what's going on. That's what's going on. I do have time to take a couple of questions today, not many, but a couple, and then we'll do this same episode in Spanish shortly. And so I can't think of a name. Thank you for being here. I see your comment. You say thank you for the work you do. Hey, you're welcome, and thank you for saying that. And then you also ask, how do you find out if you're already registered? If you look at uscis.gov and you put in information about the registration requirement, you will see the list of folks that are considered registered. And if you have specific questions as to whether or not your situation would count on that list, it's wise to talk to a lawyer, all right? Feel free to give my office a call. We're here to help. We'd love to help, all right? And we can help answer that question, okay? And if you're not already registered, then we could help you, decide whether or not registration is a good idea or see whether or not you might be eligible for some other alternative, okay? But just so you're aware, if you've ever had a visa, if you've ever applied for a green card before, if you've ever had your biometrics taken, meaning they took your fingerprints before, if you've ever, applied for a U visa or if you were ever in immigration court proceedings before, then you're already registered. Any of those situations, you're already registered. If you had a border crossing card, if you have an I-94 on entry, you're already registered, okay? All right, but thank you for asking. And if you're not clear, do get legal advice about it. All right, Mustang Lady, I get it. Okay, Mustang Lady, I see your name here. You say, is it normal to almost get approved for a U visa, but they, at the last of everything, need a birth certificate, birth and death certificates of parents? It's going to cost over $1,000 for my friend for all of this. And is it true or is this not true? Good question. So, hi, my friend says that the last thing she needs from Venezuela is the birth certificate of parents, etc. Why didn't they say this before? Okay, great question. Thank you so much for asking this question. And you're not alone with a situation like this, all right? Sometimes U visas can be pending for years and years and years. And then at the very end of the case, it's in front of a new immigration officer. They review it again, and they're like, nope, we've got to request all of this additional evidence, all right? And, and you're saying it'll cost over $1,000 for your friend from Venezuela to get all these papers. And so, I guess the good thing is that it's only $1,000, right? I've seen requests for evidence that end up costing, five, six, seven, or more $1,000. And yes, it's all of these processes can be very expensive, and that is true, right? That is true. But at least it's an option, right? At least your friend can get these papers. At least they can go through the process. I don't know anything about why this happened in her case. I don't know anything. Like sometimes we can respond to the government and say, actually, immigration, by law, you don't need these documents. All right. But if they do, I don't know the situation for the specifics of your friend's application or why they would need that evidence in your friend's specific case. But often the simplest way to fight this is by getting the documents that they're requesting, send it in, and then hopefully your friend will get the visa approved, right? And so anyway, that's and if you want a second opinion, or if you want to really, look at, is there another way? Could we challenge this request for additional evidence? Feel free to reach out. We could do a consultation and talk that through. Okay. But it's like, if you think about it, just the consultation with an attorney about this is going to be typically $250 to $350 just for that hour, right? And then the work to build or to follow up, it can the cost can be expensive, and but sometimes it's like, well, the value is, let's maximize your chances of winning that U visa, right? And so anyway, that's how that is. Henry Emmanuel Alexis, I see your question here. You say, thank you for your commitment to the support of migrants. Can someone file asylum after 1 year in the U.S.? This is an important question. Henry, thank you so much for being here. Can someone file asylum after 1 year in the U.S.? The answer is yes. A person can file asylum. However, it's also more difficult to win asylum if they have filed after the 1 year filing deadline. There is a 1 year filing deadline for everybody that's tuning in. If a person has arrived to the United States, you got to understand, and if you're afraid for your life to go back to your country, file asylum quickly. You've got to file within 1 year of your case, or you risk losing. All right? Now, there are some exceptions. So, Henry, the most common, really the exceptions that are authorized by law is, one, exceptional circumstances, quote unquote, exceptional circumstances. So if a person was sick or hospitalized or something and they couldn't file their asylum case within the 1 year, or if they had other immigration status within the 1 year, or if they, had some other reason why they didn't need to or shouldn't have known about or couldn't have filed for asylum within the 1 year, that can be one of the justifications, one of the ways around the 1 year filing deadline. The other one is what we call changed circumstances, which is like a change, like imagine there's something new that happened in your home country and you weren't afraid before, but now, some crazy dictator has had a coup or something in your home country, and now because of some change, your life is now in danger. You can file for asylum based on that, even after 1 year in the country. But it's always like you got to fight about it, right? Which means, practically speaking, a case often is more expensive if you file after 1 year in the U.S., because you've got to do this extra work to explain an exception to the 1 year filing deadline. It's so much better and cleaner, and your chances of approval go way up when you file on time. Okay? So just want to be clear about that. Thank you for asking that. I can't think of a name. You ask a follow-up question here. Can you register for VAWA if the victim's perpetrator has autism or a mental disability? Thank you for asking this. Thank you for asking this. You know, this situation actually is not uncommon. And yes, you can. All right. The requirements for VAWA, you have to have been married with there's other ways to do it too, but the most common way to get VAWA is if you are married to a U.S. citizen or a green card holder who was either physically abusive or who made you suffer, quote unquote, extreme cruelty during your marriage. All right. And you have to have lived together. You have to be a person of good moral character. There are other requirements as well. But the big ones are married in a good faith marriage with a U.S. citizen or a green card holder, and that you suffered physical abuse or extreme cruelty during that marriage. And so, there is no requirement, in other words, that the perpetrator has a clean bill of health or whatever. There's no requirement about that. So if the perpetrator suffers from bipolar disorder or schizophrenia or autism or something along those lines, and because of that the immigrant spouse suffers either physical abuse or extreme cruelty, then that person is eligible for VAWA as long as they meet the other requirements. Okay? Very good. All right, Mustang Lady, I see your other comments here. Thank you. I've helped my friend as far as I can. Okay, got it. Got it. I'm sorry to hear your situation. Yep, she's picking bottles and cans, has a little boy. She's trying to do the best she can. So, yep, I got that. And so you might as well say goodbye to her and her son. She has a lawyer. You're very upset. I got it. All right, I'm sorry about that. And if there's, I'm glad that she has a lawyer. It sounds like you've already done a lot to help her. And so you can be upset about the immigration process. Like, I am often very upset about the immigration process, but it sounds like you're doing it right. Okay? It sounds like you have helped her already, and it sounds like you're going through the correct and proper process for your friend. And yeah, she's in a difficult situation, but my best advice for her is persist. Keep at it. Follow this through. She's probably just, a little bit away. And by a little bit, I mean maybe $1,000 away from being able to fix her immigration status, potentially for her and her son, for the rest of their lives, and then be able to have a more stable income, be able to, it's like my best advice, and I'm not talking to you, Mustang Lady, I'm talking to your friend. It's like, pick up bottles, pick up cans, like, yes, do what you need to do to get this issue resolved and behind you so that you can improve the rest of your life forever, right? Like, that's what needs to happen. Good for you. You're doing it right. All right? And, that's the way I would say it, right? But anyway, that's, I don't know what else to say about that. It's an upsetting situation, but good for her, right? Good for her for taking it on. Like, keep on keeping on, right? Life is not easy, right? And immigration cases are not easy sometimes. But just keep on keeping on and make it happen, and your life will be better in the future. Okay? All right, let me leave it there, and thank you, thank you for saying everything that you said, and thank you for being here. So thanks to everyone All right. Thank you all so much for being here. I hope this is useful. I hope it's helpful. If it was, please take a moment, subscribe to our channel in YouTube. All right. If this content is helpful, when you do that, if you could hit the bell, the notifications bell, you can be notified whenever we upload an additional video with news and announcements and things of that nature. And if you are an immigrant and if you want advice or if you want help about your situation, please feel free to give us a call. We are here to help. We would love to help, okay? My name is Otis Landerholm. I'm the founding attorney here at Landerholm Immigration, A.P.C., where we fight for your American dream. I really appreciate each of you for being here today, and we'll see you next time on our next episode of the Empowered Immigrant Live. Thanks a lot, everybody. Make it a great day.